All right. Good morning, everyone. Happy New Year. Welcome to our January press conference. Now that the person we are waiting on is here, we are going to get started. Without further delay, our superintendent, Dr. Miriam Rogers.
Good morning and Happy New Year to everyone. I do appreciate all of you being here. Today, I'll provide updates and information on the fiscal year 2026 operating budget, the annual BCPS climate survey, our virtual inclement weather learning plan, and safety reminders for Team BCPS. I want to begin by recognizing board member Emery Young, who's here with us. Good morning and thank you for being here. We also want to recognize Executive Director of TABCO, Board Ben Forstenser, who's also here today. Thank you for being here. On January 14th, I formally presented a $2.98 billion operating budget proposal for fiscal year 2026 to the Board of Education. The budget proposal reflects the collective goals of Team BCPS community. Over the last several months, our staff and stakeholders have shared suggestions on the areas that they believe we should continue to prioritize in the budget in order to achieve the goal of providing the greatest public education to every student. In alignment with past practice in BCPS and across the state, the operating budget focuses primarily on the general and special revenue funds. Our request to the county government is for the general fund. The proposed budget represents a $126.4 million increase over the current FY 2025 general fund budget. The budget request maintains strategic investments in our system priority areas, specifically academic achievement, infrastructure, safety and climate, and highly effective teachers, leaders, and staff. It also includes targeted investments to continue our work to improve student outcomes in key academic areas. We had hoped, and we had shared with the community, that the FY 2026 budget landscape would not be as difficult as FY 25. However, over the summer, it became clearer, and over the last few months, even more so, that this would be another challenging budget cycle for our system. We have communicated this information clearly, directly, and often to all of our stakeholders, including the Board of Education, schools, central offices, families, partners, and community. The termination of ESSER and uncertainty from the state as it faces the largest budget deficit in decades meant that we had to again approach the development of the budget differently. We again utilized zero-based budgeting. We reimagined ways to maximize grant funding, implemented a central office hiring freeze, and budgeted to actual expenditures. This strategic work enabled us to identify more than $26 million in reductions, which is in addition to the $104 million in savings identified last year. Our focus was on increasing efficiency, eliminating redundancy, and optimizing resources closer to schools. With the tight fiscal constraints, we have prioritized funding for year 2 of the multi-year compensation package for all represented employees in the proposed budget. I believe that we must prioritize investments in recruitment and retention and recognize the efforts of our staff. This is in direct alignment with the feedback from all stakeholder groups. What we have accomplished as a system in less than 2 years has only been possible thanks to the dedication of Team BCPS staff and their intentional focus on providing high-quality instruction and support to our students. I encourage our community to stay engaged and involved in this budget process. The board will hold a work session tonight at 6:30 p.m. where they will discuss the proposed budget and ask questions. The board is scheduled to vote on the budget request on February 25th. The budget will then be submitted to the county executive and county council for approval. The annual BCPS climate survey launched yesterday, January 27th, and closes on February 28th. I encourage BCPS students in grades 3 through 12, parents, caregivers, staff, and community members to participate. This annual survey is an important way for us to hear from BCPS community, learn your views and experiences, and be responsive to your feedback by taking action to improve our schools and school system. Survey feedback is used by our schools to refine their school progress plans, as well as by the system to measure our progress towards accomplishing our goals. The survey, which is available in multiple languages, takes 3 minutes or less to complete, and it is anonymous. Last year, we had a record number of respondents, and we hope to surpass that number this year. Your voice truly matters. It has been an active winter season so far, with several more weeks of winter to go. As a reminder for Team BCPS, we have had 2 inclement weather closures this school year. We are planned for 3. So once we have the 3rd full day closure, we will transition to virtual learning as outlined in our approved virtual inclement weather day plan. Families will be notified if BCPS transitions to virtual learning, and students will be reminded to bring devices, chargers, and other instructional materials home. Staff will be asked to prepare lessons and materials, and schools will communicate their plans with families. We hope to make it through the rest of the winter without any additional closures, but who knows? I think many of us are hopeful for an early spring. As we start the second semester, I want to remind Team BCPS that we all play a role in creating safe and welcoming environments for all. As we work to improve student outcomes and bolster academic achievement, we know that we must continue to foster safe and welcoming learning environments. We will continue to address disruptive student behaviors swiftly to preserve and protect teaching and learning, and we will use all legally available tools and resources to protect students and hold accountable those who break the rules. Fighting, bringing weapons to schools, calling in false threats, and other dangerous behaviors will not be tolerated. We also want to remind parents and guardians of the importance of modeling positive behaviors in the community. We are grateful for our continued partnership with Baltimore County Police and their tireless efforts to keep our students and staff safe. We believe that working together, we will continue to have a safe and positive school year. At this time, I'll call Ms. Onijala back up to the podium.
Thank you, Dr. Rogers. So we'll open it up to questions. If you can raise your hand, okay. And do you want them seated? Or yeah, okay, you can stay seated.
Hi, Dr. Rogers. Wanted to know your thoughts on yesterday's arrest of Dazon Darian, who is facing federal charges related to child pornography.
Thank you for the question, Ms. Griffith, but I have no thoughts. I would not be commenting on former employees.
Hi. Have you had conversations with the new county executive about the likelihood of your budget being passed in full? Are you feeling optimistic about that? Any thoughts?
We have had conversations with County Executive Klossmeyer. As you know, she's a longtime friend and supporter and active in the school system. We have probably met weekly since she's been in office talking about the budget. Some pieces of the budget have to deal with, spending affordability commission and things like that. And so we're just making sure that we stay closely aligned. Any updates as we receive them, making sure that their office has them. I am optimistic that our county partners are going to do everything that they possibly can to fund as much as the budget as they have in the past. Yes.
I'm sorry. You can hold it. With Donald Trump's administration deportation of illegal immigrants, what is being done and what are you guys doing to keep kids safe, not only here but across the states?
So Baltimore County Public Schools, and thank you for that question. Baltimore County Public Schools is following the state of Maryland State Department of Education guidance. We received that guidance late last week. This weekend, we sent out a message to all of our families, all of our staff members based on that guidance. It includes resources for families directly from the state. That information is posted on our website as well. It's available in 2 languages. We're making sure that our staff is well versed in what the expectations are from the state level. Our primary role is to make sure that we are educating students, and so we are remaining focused on that. We are fortunate to have many community partners, and so we're making sure that our partners have that guidance as well, and they're at the ready to help families as needed. But we work closely with our partners, and those partners include law law enforcement, where we ensure that we are in compliance with the law as well as sharing resources.
Concerning the budget, you mentioned the total operating budget is nearly $3 billion, and the current operating budget is about $2.4 billion. But in previous budget presentations, you haven't mentioned that the total ask is $530 million for next year, more than what you have this year. Can you explain to taxpayers and parents why you haven't fully discussed that your ask is $530 million more next year?
Well, thank you for that question. I appreciate it. What you are referring to, the large part of the budget that you're referring to, the change, is in the capital budget. And I would say that that statement is not accurate. Baltimore County Public Schools has a very deliberate process to go through the capital budget request. We have a process with the Board of Education for our ask from the county as well as the ask that we have from the state. That process starts late in the spring and goes on throughout the year. And so for community members and taxpayers who want to see, all of those exhibits are available in board docs on our website. We have public work sessions. The Board of Education, as you know, poses questions to members of the team. They set the priority for those capital projects that we move forward to the state and the county where we ask for that funding. The other thing to note in terms of the big ask, we are moving forward with FY26. Every even year, you're going to see a larger ask when it comes to the capital budget, because that's typically the year where there's going to be the referendum and the 5 years worth of projects are noted in those asks. In FY26, that is the case for us. Specifically, I want to call out some of the projects and the large dollar amounts that we are speaking about. The communities have advocated for a long time and waited for a long time for a replacement of Delaney High School, of renovation of Towson High School, Scotts Branch Elementary School, Deer Park Elementary School, which is going to be the first net zero school in Baltimore County, and Lansdowne High School. Those are just a few of the major projects which total more than $900 billion. I will remind everyone that Baltimore County Public Schools has the third set of oldest buildings across the state. Our former county executive has worked tirelessly, and I believe that our current county executive, Klossmeyer, is committed to do the same, working with the state to make sure that we receive the funding that is necessary. Communities have advocated for years about the facilities that are needed, not only to relieve overcrowding in some areas, but also to modernize buildings and make sure that students are in safe, healthy spaces. So my
They don't have time to do that. They rely on their leaders to tell them the full story. Well, that's my question.
So
You could have told taxpayers the full story about the $530 million, and in your two presentations you haven't, and in your news release you haven't either.
okay, so we have shared with all of our taxpayers very clearly, very deliberately, what our ask is around the capital budget. As a matter of fact, I would submit to you that it is the direct feedback from the taxpayer that informed what our capital budget ask is. The Board of Education has been very clear on the priority areas and the list of asks that we're sending to the state. In terms of what we have been sharing around the operating budget, I will again repeat, the majority of day-to-day spending, our taxpayers wants to know what's going to happen with teachers in their schools, what's going to happen with class sizes, with resources. Staff members want to know about compensation. The majority of that day-to-day spending is from the general fund. The two large categories that we report on when we are going through the operating budget process is the general fund as well as special revenues. The capital budget has a state ask and a local ask, and we report on that robustly. There is a clear timeline. That timeline is, again, in our budget book, and it is a process that the entire community gets to watch and participate in.
And just to note for you, Chris, keeping in practice with what we've done for the past decade, we report separately on operating budget as we do the capital funds, as Dr. So we'll come back to you, Chris.
It hasn't been that big in recent years, so I think that's a difference.
So let me just touch on that a little bit. You said it hasn't been that big in recent years. So this is the first time in at least 6 years where we're building high schools. High schools, on the average, cost more than $200 million. The last few years, as we've been opening schools, we've been opening elementary schools. But what I will call your attention to, which is still posted on our website and available in all of our budget books, are the percentages. I looked most recently, and I think it was either 22 or 24, where the percentage growth 22. The ask for the capital projects fund was an additional 590.7%. And so the difference in that year was $343 million. And that is because it included elementary schools. So I think you have to account for inflation as well as high schools for the change in costs. But I would disagree that there hasn't been a massive ask in a long period of time. Again, I will call everyone's attention to third oldest set of buildings across the state of Maryland. My IPAS clearly details a 15-year plan on the priorities, and the budget. The Board of Education sets the priorities, and we go through a very robust process to identify those priorities and share with the community throughout the year. So thank you.
Dr. Rogers. Going to get to another question.
Good morning, Dr. Rogers. I want to circle back to the ICE issue and the immigration issue. We read the guidance from the state, but you are boots on the ground, hands on. You have staff in these schools, staff, teachers. You have 111,000 students.
Absolutely.
How are you going to keep children focused on education when there may be people coming in and out of your classrooms? They don't know, are they going to be going by last name? Is it going to be just Hispanics or Latinos? What information, more detail have you received? And do you know of any other schools systems in the state that have been visited by ICE yet?
So I am not aware of school systems that have had these visits, and I want to make it clear: Baltimore County Public Schools has not had any visits like that. You speak to safety of students. That's our role. That's work that we do every single day as a school system. We take that very seriously, our responsibility to the 111,000 students that we serve, and very much in the same way that anyone would show up to a building, that there are certain safety protocols that we would have to follow. and that deal with our partners as well as the Office of Safety, we would make sure that that occurred as well. But I think the teachers and administrators are well positioned to remind students that we are here to provide them with a free, appropriate education, and we're focused on that, providing those resources as the state has indicated. But really, our work is making sure that students feel comfortable. We have not had any indications. I will share with you that across the state, superintendents were invited to meet with the state superintendent of schools, as well as leadership from the state agencies. I personally have contact information if there were to be any kind of emergency that I can call directly to verify if anything is occurring, but that is not a situation that we have found ourselves in, and that's not something that we anticipate will happen. Also, I don't have any information in terms of, how enforcement efforts are moving forward. I have received no indication that, there's a list with last names or anything like that.
Question about the blueprint. Now that we know a pause in the collaborative time has an impact on multilingual students and another group of students I'm forgetting right now, but knowing that and how the funding formula works, is there concern now for you on what the money from the state will be in the future, or do you know how much BCPS stands to lose if that proposal goes through?
Yes, there is concern for me, and I feel confident saying for all 23 other colleagues. We do have a rough idea based on the fiscal note that was shared last week by the State Department. This evening we have a budget work session, and so tune in this evening, because that is going to be part of the information that I share with the Board of Education and with the community, the potential if, as you said, this passes as written. But absolutely, that's an area of concern.
Hi there. In regards to ICE, any staff or teachers arrested in any sort of raid that you possibly know? Also, what about the kids? Are they not showing up? Do you feel that there's students in the school system who may not be coming to school because they're afraid that they might get arrested? And one final question about the executive order. The president has said he's going to go after criminals. Is that okay with you to get rid of criminal students if that's the case, or teachers? That's a different issue. But in the school system, are you okay with that?
All right. I think I remember all three parts. Actually, maybe I don't. The one part about are we okay with criminals, irrespective of ICE or any other specific groups, I think I have made it very clear that as a school system, safety and climate is incredibly important to us. And part of that, I shared in my remarks, we want students to follow rules. We're talking about the little rules inside of the building. So certainly the larger rules that would include crimes, we are not okay with students engaging in those behaviors or staff members. So that is our position on that. I am unaware of any staff member, I think I remember all three now. I'm unaware of any staff member who has been involved in any way with being detained. And lastly, around attendance, I will share with you that is a concern for us and a concern probably for many of my colleagues around the state, because whether or not there is enforcement, the fear for some families is going to cause them to make some decisions. We know that we can't impact students in a positive way in terms of their academics, their access to resources, their social emotional health, if they're not in the building. And so I believe that's a conversation that we're going to have with the State Department of Education Superintendent very soon, particularly with this emphasis on chronic absenteeism. What might that look like for school systems this year? unclear what safeguards will be put in place, but it's certainly top of mind, which I think is why people are coming together to make sure that there are resources complying with the law, but there are resources available for families and students if they need access to those resources. But thank you.
Ask about immigration status for students or staff or anyone else, but do you have an idea maybe how many might be here undocumented?
That I couldn't tell you. And in terms of staff, I think there are some legal requirements to be able to work that. Yeah, yeah. The student part we don't ask, but yes, yeah. I couldn't give you a number on that because
So you do check the legal status of staff?
Yes. That's required. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you, team.
Okay. Thank you all. Be safe.
Appreciate your time.